Get on board the Bernier bus train. Come get on board the Bernier bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board the Bernier bus train.
Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernier Bus Show. What are we doing today? We need to go back and talk about elitist suburban Democrats. It's important to get the word out, and we have learned a lot since September 23rd when this episode of The Hill Rising came out. Crystal Ball is right on target back in September, and she's even more on target now. Let's start with her and then unpack what she said in September for early November 2019.
As the race narrows to a top three with Kamala, Booker, Beto, Buttigieg, and others falling away, Warren will be the primary beneficiary. All of those candidates hold appeal to affluent white liberals, and that vote, let's call it the Rachel Maddow vote, is rapidly coalescing around Elizabeth Warren.
And it's even more true now. We got Beto dropped out. If Mayor Pete drops out, it's going to be very obvious because there's a big overlap between Mayor Pete's voters and Elizabeth Warren's voters. They're affluent, white, they like good resumes, they like plans, they like white sheets, and so even more than Kamala dropping out, because Kamala's base overlapped with Elizabeth Warren's quite a bit. So as Crystal presciently said, when certain candidates drop out, they're going to go to Elizabeth, in most cases now, more than they will to Bernie. The exception to that is when Joe Biden drops out. More of his voters would go to Bernie.
Now, this trend is reinforced, of course, by the glowing media coverage of Warren. Of course, the media consistently reflects the tastes and preferences of affluent white liberals, so no surprise there. Just consider the number of non-ironic takes on the incredible brilliance of Warren's selfie line. It's not hard to imagine this white liberal affection carrying Warren to wins in the overwhelmingly white states of both Iowa and New Hampshire. It's also not hard to imagine those wins resulting in a kind of momentum that leads enough voters of color to come over to Warren for her to outright win the nomination.
And that is discussed. We're going to come back to this one, but in this show, in August, we talked about why Elizabeth Warren struggles with black voters.
A very interesting new Pew Research Center poll. They dug into a lot of Democratic preferences. What we see is that, predictably, that Joe Biden is the first choice amongst these candidates. But what I liked about this poll is that it broke it down by gender and by race. So we see that black support for Joe Biden, as predicted, is very strong. But we also see, and this is what I think is the most notable number in this entire thing, is the 4% black voter support for Elizabeth Warren.
And they go on and explain that, and they hear that the black supporters who do support Warren are affluent and educated. So, and that's when we talk about what would happen in the general election with Elizabeth Warren match up against Donald Trump. What Sagar was saying there is that you cannot win. He went on to say it later. You can go back and watch. You cannot win in the general election without the black vote. And then that's a fact, Jack. So we've got Elizabeth Warren with affluent white voters and affluent black voters. And we've got not a lot of other segments. And what you've got in the general election, you've got people who won't vote at all unless they can vote for someone they think will change things. And that's not how grubby populists view Elizabeth Warren.
Now, in another cycle, I would have been thrilled by a potential Warren nomination. For one of the more progressive members of the Senate to be our party's standard bearer would have seemed a wonderful thing. In fact, in 2015, I begged Warren to run and to challenge Hillary Clinton. Warren at that time was an outsider populist warrior who'd yet to have her fire dimmed by the ways of Washington. But now...
But now, and why didn't she run? Because we know, as Kyle Kulinski points out, that she made a deal with Hillary not to run. And then she made a deal with Hillary. This is my research. She made a deal with Hillary to run through the talent agencies who also represent Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Cory Booker. That flood of presidential hopefuls came in via the money of the Clinton machine. And so Elizabeth and Hillary are tight, and they're versions of each other if you look at their policies, their actual war voting and everything else. We've been over that over and over, so I'm not going to go into that now.
Now, if I'm being honest, the thought of Warren as our nominee fills me with dread. Her courting of the Dem establishment has made me skeptical that she'd really break the kneecaps required to bring the big structural change she's fond of talking about. But what really terrifies me is that Warren is likely to lose to Trump.
Yes.
And if Warren loses to Trump, not only will we have the utter catastrophe of 4 more years of national destruction, the establishment and the media will all blame us progressives for the loss. They'll say we wanted to go too far too fast, that we would have wiped the floor with Trump if only we'd run Amy Klobuchar or Steve Bullock instead of AOC Sr.
Yeah.
And then it will be another generation before we have a chance to run a real progressive for president again, if, of course,
I don't even know. It might be never. We might have one shot at this because the power is getting more powerful. The transnational corporations are nearly out of reach now legally. They've nearly, with what Obama was trying to do with TPP, they nearly escaped any kind of legal accountability with any nation. And the United States is the most powerful nation in the world, and transnational corporations under these supposed free trade agreements would have no accountability to anybody, no legal accountability. And so after that happens, when would we ever have an opportunity to elect somebody who would try to take away the power from transnational corporations? It may never happen. It may never happen. The world may be destroyed before we would ever have a chance to vote for someone like Bernie Sanders.
The country even survives that long. But the truth is, the reason Warren is likely to lose has nothing to do with ideology and everything to do with culture. To put it quite simply, Warren is a wine track candidate. As much as she wants to run as the down-home Oklahoma girl, she hasn't been that Betsy for a long time.
Hold on a sec. I'm going to get me a beer.
Be honest. Do you really believe that is the candidate who can beat Trump? And this is what pundits consistently fail to understand. Voters don't choose candidates because of their ideological fit. They choose them because of their cultural fit. It's no accident that the first to fully fall for Warren were the post-grad types, the folks who've successfully ascended the meritocracy. They jumped through all the collegiate hoops. They fundamentally believe in the system because it's worked for them. They want to help working and lower-class Americans, sure, but they don't actually trust them. I've got a plan for that is like a magical elixir to this group. It says the experts have been consulted, the white paper has been drafted. We, the ascenders of the meritocracy, will decide what is to be done about these poor, struggling denizens of the working class. You can close your eyes and just imagine I've got a plan for that emblazoned on t-shirts for Al Gore or John Kerry or certainly for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
That fact alone should strike terror in your heart. There's a reason why Biden and Bernie tend to appeal to working class voters and have broad overlap between their coalitions in spite of their vast ideological distance. Neither has taken an overly intellectual approach. Both make an appeal to emotion, Biden to nostalgia and Bernie to righteous anger. There's a reason why Warren and Buttigieg have broad overlap between their coalitions in spite of having very different ideologies. Both have a pitch centered specifically around how smart and special they personally are. Behold my resume. Behold my plan. This appeal to white papers, intellect, and resume items frequently wins the day in the peculiar battlefield that is the Democratic primary. But it's a catastrophe come November, especially against the master of emotional lizard brain appeals, Donald Trump. After all, just consider the numbers. A winning candidate will be able to motivate new working class voters of color or flip Obama-Trump voters, preferably some of both, frankly. There is no indication in Warren's base of support that she is particularly likely to do either.
And she's just going to lose. It's just a fact. And So when you are in your neighborhoods with your favorite comfortable white or black voters, let them know that if they insist on nominating Elizabeth Warren, then the people who could actually defeat Donald Trump, the grubby populists, won't even come out to vote in November. This all has to be decided before July in Milwaukee. We need to make it clear to the comfortable voters that the people who feel that the system has been working for them, the people who don't want their kids to go to school with grubby populists' kids, we need to make it clear to them that they need to get over this shit now. There isn't any way to make this work. There isn't any way to get somebody that appeals to the base that Warren appeals to into the White House. The numbers haven't been there for a long time. Hey, let's do an experiment and see what happens if we run somebody who has a plan for that against a populist. Let's run an establishment Democrat against somebody who's perceived as an outsider. Let's do an experiment and see what happens. Hey, wait, we did that in 2016. We already know what's going to happen, and it's going to be worse this time. The Bernie or Trump supporters combined with the Bernie or bust supporters will absolutely take Elizabeth down in the swing states. There's just no question about it. So if you really don't like Donald Trump, you're going to have to get over this shit now. You're going to have to figure out that we can't nominate Elizabeth. You can't. There are people I know well who are donating to Elizabeth Warren's campaign, and it's going nowhere. What you can do, I'm pretty sure you have enough of the voting class to get Elizabeth Warren nominated, but that's as far as it'll go. We already know the ending because we've already seen it before. So we'll know there's a chance when the white suburbanites stop donating to Elizabeth Warren and they start supporting in their landline polls, they start supporting Bernie over Biden, over Warren. I think Pete's going to drop out before February. That's my prediction. But if he doesn't, then he'll go for a while. But eventually his voters will accrue to Elizabeth Warren. And then, okay, white suburbanites, you win. You get Elizabeth. You don't get the grubby populist Bernie Sanders. But when it's time to blame, and that's what she said earlier, what Crystal said earlier, when the blame game starts, we told you so. We told you now it's November. We told you well in advance of the primaries. We warned you if you insist on Elizabeth Warren as the nominee, you'll get Trump, and it will be you to blame. And I know I can hear the voices from last time who blamed me. You voted for Trump. No, I didn't. I voted for Jill Stein. No, you voted for Trump. You wasted your vote. It's all coming again. It's nothing to do except refer back to this day in November and say, no, I told you. Go back and watch it. It will be painful, but it will be true. Keep on burning. See you tomorrow.
Get on board the Bernie bus train. Come get on board the Bernie bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board